So it says that he is our hope and he is the anchor that holds. And so one of the things is this, and we're going to talk about it this morning, and it's talking about remaining. Because there's a lot of times that we're going to be floating. We're on this ship and it's going to really have a lot of issues and a lot of problems. But Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 19, which is up there, and we've got some other things that we'll do. But Hebrews chapter 6 verse 19 tells us, you got it? Yes, okay. But we have this hope as an anchor for the soul. It is firm and secure, or it enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain. And so when we started talking all along, we've used this same definition or same illustration. And so let me give it to you again. An anchor is an amazing invention. It's used by fishermen, by sailors for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's not something new. It's been around forever. There are some times that you'll see, sometimes somebody will come up with a new invention and how to do this. But generally, when you look at an anchor, it's been about the same way that it's always been. It really hasn't changed. Exactly, only the size. The ships have gotten bigger and the anchor's gotten bigger because of the ship, but basic size of that anchor is the same. It's either a 2-prong or a 3-prong. Might be a 4, I don't know if they've got any of those. But it's normally made out of the same thing. It's been made out of metal. The problem is you can't make it out of chrome. It's too light. I don't really know if you can make it out of recyclable material. You may be able to do something with the steel. I don't know. But all I know is that it's there and is used to secure a vessel to the bed of a body of water to prevent the craft from drifting due to wind or current. It's simple in its design, but it's powerful in its function. And one of the things that we need to understand as Christians, and that is this. As believers, we are committed or we are urged or encouraged to remain steadfast, not wavering, not bending with the current generation, not bending with the current thought or the current fad or anything else. But a lot of times what you have, and sometimes we do this in church. What's the latest fad that catches people? And what ends up happening a lot of times is this. A pastor comes along and they get this idea of how to grow the church. And so they will grow their church to a rather large number, and it seems to be blossoming and everything's going. And then all of a sudden they write a book. And when they write the book, everybody reads the book, and then they have a plan that they all follow. And what happens is they try to take the plan that worked. If I can keep this in the right position, I need to do one of those tape things, on you, like they do with dancers and stuff, in the plays. But anyway, what they do is they try to take this plan that worked, for instance, in California, and use it in Middletown. And the problem is, people are people, but culture is different. And not everything that comes along is a one-size-fits-all. And so that's the way, ladies and gentlemen, church is. One church won't fit everybody. Everybody in Middletown will not come here. Okay? Because God has got churches situated and to reach certain people. And sometimes what people need to realize is, what is our field? And we need to stay steadfast instead of trying to wave with the culture. And so what God is trying to tell us is that there's sometimes that we need to stay steadfast, because what's going to happen, as we talked last week, Jesus didn't say if the storms come. Jesus said when the storms come. They are coming. And again, these pastors or preachers that preach that when you come to God, everything is just going to be fine. The whole rest of your life, you'll never have another problem. If you have a problem, it's because of lack of faith. So you just need to get some more faith. Well, let me say this. I don't know how much more faith you could get than Job. And he had some issues. The storms came, and he got blasted. Not because he did anything wrong, but because he was righteous. So I hear people all the time saying, man, Pastor, I've got problems. And I said, when did they start? They said, as soon as I got earnest about serving God, I say, welcome to the club. Yeah. This is the Satan Hates You Club. And he's going to do whatever he can. I said, but you got to understand, that's the way he operates. So it's no secret. It's been working since the beginning of time. Why change it? If it works, let's keep going with it. And he does. So as we talked last week, we talked about they're going to come. Okay? So today, what we're going to talk about is, when these storms come, how am I going to remain holding on? Remember when the disciples were on the ship? Jesus told them, get in the ship and go to the other side. And a storm came up. Remember? They are doing their best to lighten that ship. And that storm, it is not stopping. It is just blowing that ship all over the place. And all of a sudden they look out and hear, there's something on the water. And Peter, being the smart guy he is, where you always say something, Lord, is that you? Is that you, Lord? If it is, bid me to come. And what did Jesus tell him to do? Come on. And what did Peter do? Oh, he went. And he was walking on the water. And the storms kept going. Peter's really feeling good about this. Oh, yeah. Hey, you guys. Y'all back there in the boat. Look at me, man. Look at me. Then all of a sudden, for some reason, Peter took his eyes off of Jesus. And what happened? He started sinking. Jesus reached down and grabbed him by the hand and pulled him up. Did Jesus take and put Peter back in the boat? Or did Peter walk on the water till they got to the other side? Let me tell you, Peter did not let go of Jesus' hand. You want to talk about holding steadfast? Peter held steadfast because he knew that if I let go, I'm sinking. I'm drowning. I'm going under. I already made that mistake, and I'm not making that mistake again. And so what we need to understand is this. In this world that we live in right now, ladies and gentlemen, it is fast-paced. It is ever-changing. You think about it. I was sharing, and I've shared before, I started out in computers in 1972. I actually started working at a bank in Hamilton, Ohio in 1971, where they took your checks and they would bring your checks in, and then what they would do is they would have, most of the time it was women that were working there, and what they would do is they would look at that check, and you wrote that check out for $250. And so what they had to do was put it in a machine, and they had to encode the bottom of that check. So it would encode basically your checking account number and all of this stuff, and it would then encode the amount. So then they would take that check, and it would come over to me because I was working during this period of time, and I would take that check and run it through a microfiche. So we would record it. So that's how, if you needed the check, they would go through the microfiche and they would get it, and we would send it out to the banks in town if it was drawn on them, or if it was drawn on somebody else that was not in town, it went to the Federal Bank down in Cincinnati, and then they would disperse it out and clear it through everything. So that's what I did. 1972, I started operating with the computer. That computer was probably in a room about this size, okay? It was on an elevated floor about this high. It had about 10 air conditioners. I forget how many tons they were, but they were big. And they had all of this air going underneath that floor to keep those computers cold or chilled so they wouldn't overheat, okay? This phone and any phone that you've got processes quicker and more data than that big, huge computer. And it's changing more and more every day. The pictures that you take on this thing, they're starting to get really good. Sometimes you can't tell the difference. Matter of fact, I see a lot of pictures on the internet that are enhanced to the point where you don't even know if that's really the person that you're talking to or what they look like. So we're constantly changing. Your automobiles, they go faster. Gas mileage is better, but the problem is they're now so wrapped up with computers that you can't even work on your own car. You've got to have a special person in there to do it, and it's now costing you all kinds of money. The spark plugs have now become other things, and you've got all of this other stuff that's there. And so you buy this thing, and it just goes nuts with this. And so we're constantly changing and changing and changing. And so what ends up happening is we need to hunker down for the long haul, because it's still going to change. Used to be, you'd go to the store. For instance, I remember going to the store when I was a kid, buying penny candy. And that same penny candy today is costing me almost a quarter. It's ridiculous with all of the things that are there. And so when we begin to look at this, we begin to also see the culture. It's constantly on a move. It's moving in so many directions. Used to be, when you were born, you basically stayed roughly right where you were born. You grew up, you got a job in town, you never moved out. Now you're all over the place. Families are here and there and everything. Used to, you would call somebody up and you'd have to tell the other person on the line, because you had party lines, you had to tell them, hey, could you hang up so I can call somebody? And sometimes you always had the busybody in town that never hung up, and they always loved to listen to your conversations. and go down to the store and tell everybody in the store about everything that's going on in your life, so that when you went to the store, everybody's saying, well, I heard your Aunt Sally's been sick. How did you hear that? Oh, well, Georgette over here told me. I wish Georgette would get on my phone. Leave me alone. And you got all of this stuff that was going on. It's the Andy Griffith show, which was Sarah, the operator, right? Everybody's going through Sarah. So we began to do these things. So what we need to understand is when we talk about the Bible talks about words like perseverance, and it talks about steadfastness when it describes faith. Because one of the things that as Christians that we have, it is faith. That's what gets us through every day. Well, let me add a new word, if you don't mind, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It is called remain. Because you can have faith and you can have perseverance, but there's something about remaining in the faith. There's something about not being drifting and being where you're at. Because what's going to happen? Most of the time, a lot of you that are older, you had a job. In your life, you worked at that job. You got a job maybe out of high school if you didn't go to college, or if you went to college, you got a job out of college, and you stayed with that company. Today, it's ever changing. Very rarely will you stay at the same place doing the same thing with the same company than you did when you first started. And now, used to, you could retire at 60, 62, 65, 67. Now they want to move it up to 70. Over in Europe, I think they're trying to do 74, 75. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to work the day you're born. They're going to put you to some kind of job, and you're going to work until you die. And that's what they want. But God's saying a lot of things. And so what do we need to understand is this, that God is calling us to what? Remain. Not to be constantly changing all the time. We're letting culture change us and how we do things, how we relate to each other, even the conversation and the words we use. Today, certain words that I use, that you and I, more mature adults, can I use that word? Some of us are more mature than others, okay? Words that we used to use in our vocabulary, we can't use anymore. Because they've changed the meaning of the word to mean something totally different. And all of a sudden you're using this word and you're in a conversation with someone and they look at you and they're saying, what are you talking about? They begin to start calling you racist or a misogynist or this or that, whatever. And you can't use the same terms because culture is changing. And what's happening is we're allowing the culture to also change how we relate to God. And God's saying, no, I am staying the same. Culture can change, but I'm not changing. And so I need you to remain steadfast and not be changing with all of these things. And so what we need to understand is that when God has invited us to be a part of his family, to be a part of the bride of Christ, with Jesus as our Savior, God as our Father, that is not for a little while. It is forever. It isn't coming and going. God doesn't get mad at you and kick you out. Okay? Does he get upset? Yes. But he doesn't kick us out. So we're in there for the long haul. So, when we begin to understand what is our anchor, Our anchor is not culture, because the culture's changing. So I need an anchor that's going to be steadfast and is always going to be there, never changing. So what is or who? That's Jesus. John chapter 15, verses 5 through 8. Jesus explains it this way. He says, I am the vine. You are the branches. We need something to hold on to. We need something to anchor to. And Jesus says, I am the vine. And you are a branch going out of that vine. He says, the one who remains in me and I in him will what? Much fruit. Not one little twig or one little grape. I'm the vine, you're the branches, and if you will stay with me, you are going to produce much fruit. He goes on and he says, because you what? You can't do it. If I can put it in proper English, you can't do nothing without him. But I can do everything with him because I'm in him. He says, if anyone does not remain in me, he's thrown aside like a branch and he withers. So what's that mean? Kind of cut off. And if you're cut off from Jesus, if you're not grounded in him, you're going to wither. Because Satan is going to blast you full force and won't stop. From the moment of the conception of Christ, Satan did everything he could to try to stop it. From the birth to the death to his resurrection. He didn't stop. He was constantly on him. He says, they gather them, throw them into the fire, and they're all burned. Okay? But look what he says. He says, but if you remain in me, what's going to remain in you? My words. My words. Ask whatever you want, and it'll be done for you. You want to know why a lot of times things aren't going? You're not holding on. He says, my Father is glorified by this, that you produce much fruit and prove to be my disciples. You know what God loves? We hear all the time that God loves a cheerful giver. What God really loves is those that remain steadfast in him. Because you're going to produce much fruit. Now, I don't know, have any of you all ever heard of the salt, the tree, and the baboon trick? I see one person shaking their head. That yes, they know this. It's a baboon. It's a baboon, a salt, and a tree. In Africa, the Bushmen, they're in Africa, they're thirsty. They're looking for water and they can't find any water. So what they do is they know that the baboon knows where the water's at. They've searched around and they have found the watering hole. So what they do is basically in a tree or a hole or something they'll dig. And what they'll do is they carry salt with them. And they take this salt and they put it in the hole in the tree or the hole in the ground. And a baboon loves salt. So what the baboon does is the baboon takes its hand, sticks it in the tree hole where the salt's at, or in the hole in the ground, and grabs hold of the salt. Okay? They got a hold of the salt, and they're trying to bring the salt out of the hole. Now, their hand has expanded, and they won't let go. So they're stuck. The bushman comes up, captures the baboon. The baboon will sit there all day eating that salt. They just lick away until all the salt's gone. And now they're thirsty. And so what the bushman does is he turns the baboon loose and follows the baboon to the watering hole. Because that baboon will sit there and eat that salt until it's gone. And now they're thirsty. And so the bushman then follows the baboon, and they both drink. You know, they don't kill the baboon, because they need that baboon the next time to come around to find another watering hole if they happen to forget. And so they'll continue to do this. And what happens when most people see this for the first time, they ask this question, well, why doesn't the baboon just drop the salt? Why don't they just let it go? Well, let me ask you this question. You ever got a hold of something that you shouldn't have got a hold of, that God warned you about, and you just held on, and you held on, and he keeps telling you to let it go as it's frozen, you know, and you don't, and then you find out that it wasn't what it was cut out to be, and you should have let it go? We're like a baboon. They're not that much different than we are. We do things that even they do. And we may make fun of them and turn around and do the same thing that we're laughing at them to do. There are some times that we hold on to things and they make us miserable, but we still hold on to it and we don't let it go. And God's telling us, you need to let it go. You need to let it go. I'll take care of it. I've got you. But we don't let it go. And so when we begin to look at this, there's something that we need to understand. And what the very first thing is, he loved us first. Okay? And one of the most amazing things about God in his creation, before we could even reciprocate his love that he gave to us, he gave us love first. His love for us was not an afterthought. His love for us was first and foremost. When he created you and I, he created us first, not out of anger, not out of hatred, not out of just to show everybody else what he could do. He created us to show everyone what love is, what unending love means. Showing that love never changes. The love that he created us with in the very beginning, he has not changed. Even though we do stupid things sometimes as human beings, God has never stopped loving us. And he loved us first before we even knew about that love. He began to show this. 1 John chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. It says that God's love was revealed among us in this way. Kind of heard this verse before in a different thing, kind of like John 3:16, that God sent his one and only Son into the world so that what? That we might live what? I hear people all the time saying, I want to live my own life. No, we're not living our own life. We're living our life through him. Through him. So why is it that we keep trying to imitate somebody else instead of being an imitator of Christ? Isn't that what he asked? So that when people see us, they see him. They don't see us. The achievements that we make, the blessings that we have, they're not ours, they're his. He says, so that the world, sent his Son into the world so that we might live through him. Now look, he says, love consists of this, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for what? For our good deeds? For the great things that we're going to accomplish? For all the things that matter? No. Atoning sacrifice for our sins. That's how much God loved us first. He sent his Son even before we were born to be that sacrifice. And we need to understand something. There are times that there's people that we love, okay? And as a child, when someone that you loved was hurting, what did you want to happen? If someone was hurting and you loved them, you want the hurt to be removed. If somebody that you love is sick, what do you want? You want them to be well, right? Don't you understand that's what God wants with us? He wants us to be healthy. He doesn't want us hurt. He wants the best for us. We think, well, we've got this cornered on this love for other people. That's our market. Failing to understand, no, it isn't. That's his. He's showing us how to love people and love one another. Those that are close to us. We hurt for them. Don't you think that God hurts for us when we're hurting? Because he loved us first. In Matthew chapter 22, you just go read the chapter. It's basically where there's a banquet, okay? And it's a heavenly banquet table that he's going to prepare. In Psalms chapter 139, you'll find that this is where God is talking about where I loved you even before you were created in the womb. And he talks about that. And so what we need to understand is this, that every one of us, and if I can get you to understand this, this is one of the things that a lot of times people don't understand. Do you know that each and every one of you have a unique gift? Do you realize that? That you have a unique gift. Now here's the question. What are you doing with that gift? You see, God created each and every one of us with a unique gift and sent us to a certain church to use that gift. Do you understand? There's a lot of people out there that have a unique gift that are never attached to a church, and they can't exercise that gift. They say, well, I'm going to do this out there, and they want to be loners. That's not what God saved us to be, as loners. He saved us to be part of a community and to get involved with whatever it is that he's called us to do. And write this down, this chapter, and I need you to go home and read it. It's in 1 Peter chapter 2. Because what he talks about is putting together into a spiritual house, bringing us not just into a biological family, but into a spiritual family, and doing the things that are there. And then what you find is this. When everybody is coming together in this spiritual house, using their gift that God has uniquely made them, he uses this illustration in Matthew chapter 16, in verse number 18. And he says, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. Now, a lot of times what we're saying is, well, that's talking about me. No, it's talking about his house, his spiritual house that we're all part of. That no matter what happens and what comes against it, and Satan throws everything at it, he says, no matter whatever comes out of hell, he says, the body that I have built, the spiritual house that I have built, is able to withstand anything that comes from hell. And that's what he's telling us. And sometimes we need to understand that he loved us first. So what's the second thing? The second thing is we become wandering sheep. Okay? What happens to people? They get upset and they start moving. You say, well, no, hold on a minute. How many times, and maybe you were the child that couldn't wait till you got 18 and move out of that house because you didn't like the rules and you wanted to be on your own, and buddy, you got out on your own and you found out Mom, can I come home? I know you tried to teach me how to do the laundry, but I think I forgot that lesson. How do I cook a hot dog? I know there's a trick to it, so Can I come back and you show me how? It's not always that way. But can I tell you something? As children of God, sometimes the sheep begins to wander. And when the sheep wanders, the fox is out there trying to destroy the sheep. Isaiah chapter 53, verse number 6. Look at what he says. We all. See, now, I'm the pastor, so I really shouldn't say we all. I should say you all. But no, this includes me too. We all went astray like sheep. We've turned to our own way. And the Lord has punished him in the iniquity of us all. We've all, at some time or another, been a wandering sheep. We've hit this. I've given you some of my life. And part of my life, unfortunately, sometimes was spent proving myself to other people. Part of it was because of where I grew up, out of a poor family. Yes, the clothes that I wore were in style. They were just in style before the time. I had holes in my pants. The bad part about it is that my mom would always fix those holes. So you went to school with patches. Today today they don't patch them. They buy them shredded. If I wish I could go back in time and take some of my clothes that I had back then, I could get a lot of money for it. You're paying double the price for half the material. And it's got all these holes in it. But you can't do that. I knew what it was like to put cardboard in the bottom of your shoes where you had holes because it wasn't your turn to get shoes yet. You had to wait. I know what it's like. I didn't walk 2 miles to school up the hill both ways, But I did walk over 2 miles to school, back and forth. Because back when I went to school, it was the public bus was the school bus. And you had to pay for it. And so, packed lunches, yeah. I got money for milk. Because you couldn't put milk in your brown paper poke. It wasn't a metal lunchbox with all kinds of characters. It was a brown bag. And guess what? You recycled that brown bag and used it tomorrow. And it may be that brown paper bag, that may be your lunch bag for a week. So I came from a poor family, really rough. But you know what? God blessed in so many ways. I never really had to prove anything to anybody. But I thought I had to. And I had to learn to let go. We've shared that our first place that we pastored, we had good jobs, we had cars, and we had brought back furniture from Germany. And when the flood came, we had nothing. All of the clothes that we thought we could save, they were all, you couldn't even wash them and get the stains out from the fuel oil and the water and stuff. And so it was basically starting all over again. My wife can bear witness. We really couldn't even live where we were living. Some people brought in a trailer, like a Winnebago, so that we could actually bring our kids back home to live with us. And we lived in that for a few months. We had to move out of there, and we didn't have a house. We had 2 weeks to find a house. We found a house just at the last moment, right down from where we were at across the street. We raised our kids for the remainder in that house. And you know what? I have been blessed with stuff that I would never dream that I would ever have. Because why? Because God took a little boy and made him into a man that understands what it's like to have a relationship with Jesus and the importance of it. But more than that, the importance of holding on when you don't even know if your daughter's going to live. When she was diagnosed with with a brain tumor, and you don't know. So sometimes you need to understand some things. You got to quit wandering. And let me say this to you as we finish. I can't imagine what all of you are going through, because each of us go through different things. I know a lot of times somebody's going to come up to you and say, well, I understand what you're going through, and I understand what you feel. No, they don't. They understand what they felt when they were going through a situation that may be similar to what you're going through. But they didn't have your personal experiences that you had through life that has hopefully helped you to deal with what it is that you're dealing with. And I understand that asking you to let go of what you're holding on to and holding on to Jesus is like saying, okay, what you're asking me to do is go out here and climb this mountain, and I have never had any training. God's saying, turn loose and take hold of my hand, because I'll get you through this. David, if you go back and look at his life, he was running between battles, back and forth, and running to save his life. He was fighting the enemy over here, and over here, there's somebody else over here trying to kill him. And he's just running back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And David ends up writing Psalms chapter 23, where he says, the Lord is my shepherd. And he says, you know what, I lack nothing. I got everything that I need. He says he makes me to lie down in green pastures. basically saying, I could stay here all day. I've got everything that I need to eat. He leads me beside quiet or still waters, giving me what it is to drink. He restores my soul. He's bringing me to a spot in a place that is so peaceful that I can just shut out all of the cares of the world and just look around me and see how much God is just blessing me with what I need. And he says, listen, not only does he restore my soul, he leads me in the right paths. Why? Not for me, but for his name's sake. And that's what he's doing. What if what you're holding on to right now, what if you decided to let go of it and grab hold of Jesus? And what if that meant green pastures, still waters, and restoration? What if it meant that for all eternity, I'm going to be able to lie down in green pastures? What if, for all eternity, I can walk beside the still waters? And what if, for all eternity, I am restored into the fellowship of God forever? Not just for a short time, but forever. What if that's what that meant? May I say this to you? That's what it means. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be great and wonderful down here on this earth. But it does mean that for all eternity, that's what I get. That's what you get. And maybe, just maybe, maybe what you're doing is you're holding on to the proverbial salt that Satan has offered you. You've got your hand stuck down in the hole. And God's saying, let go of it. Let go of it. I'll take care of you. I'll give you the water that you need. Will you? Will you? Because that's what he's asking you to do.